welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to show you my Neofinetia Falcata Orchid that I got back in October of 2020 from Hauserman Orchids. I'm going to be repotting this orchid, and I thought it'd be helpful to show you what this orchid looked like before I originally transitioned it into semi-hydro. As you can see, it had a pretty good root system. I didn't even need to soak this orchid before I transitioned it over, and I was very happy with those roots. It was a very healthy orchid. So all I did here was I removed the bark and I cut off the old roots, which were in the center of the root ball, and then I went ahead and transitioned this orchid into semi-hydroponics. This orchid had 4 fans, and I was very excited to grow it because I heard it was so fragrant, and it's delivered on that promise. It bloomed for me 4 times in this new setup. So what I did was I used my traditional self-watering setup, and on this day I actually transitioned the yellowbird orchid, which I will link for you right here, and the Rhyncholelia digbyana. All of these did surprisingly well, and I was very happy with how they grew and how they're doing right now. This orchid has been in this setup just under a year and a half, and usually when you transition orchids into semi-hydro, a lot of the old roots die off and then the new roots adapt. In this case, this orchid didn't have new root tips really, so I was afraid that they'd die off, but it surprised me by not dying, and the pot stayed quite firm to the touch. So it was only until recently that I noticed that these roots that you see here have started dying off, and now we're starting to get a new root system. So let's fast forward to February of 2022, just about a year and a half later, so you can see how it's doing now. So this orchid has grown 1 additional fan. It's a very, very slow grower, but as I said, it's bloomed 4 times, so I'm very happy with how it's done. Now I can tell those roots died because when I press on the pot, there's a lot of give. So as you can see here, this is going to be much easier than my yellowbird repot because those roots have died, and when you have roots that are still alive, they adhere to the leca. When you have roots that are dead, they basically slide off. So I'm going to be removing the leca. If you'll notice, there's a couple of brand new roots that have grown in and adapted to this growing system, and the old roots have finally completely died off. So we will be replacing the old root system with those new green root tips that are growing, and I'm going to refresh and clean that leca and get this all cleaned up. So we're left with a much smaller root system. That old root system that was transitioned from bark to leca finally died off, and now we'll have a new root system come down and adapt to the Leca. You'll notice that green root there, that's a part of the root that has grown and adapted to the growth system. We have a couple of others as well, and as new root tips go down, they'll grow happily in this system, and depending on your environment, it may like it or it may not like it. For me, Leca tends to work quite well, but it's not the same for all plants or all environments. So you have to do what works best in your environment, and the best bet is to have some trial and error. So I'm going to take this orchid and pot all of those roots down into the Leca. I think I'll leave the aerial root as aerial since it was like that for a while, and I don't want that one to die off, but I will plop this in its new setup in the same Leca, which I've cleaned, and in the same stones as well as the same wick. So everything's been cleaned and sterilized, and we're just going to pot it just right back up the same way it was. The roots I'm pointing out are the roots that have grown and adapted to the system, and that new root tip is going to grow in and adapt. You'll have better success when you have a brand new root tip grow in versus an old root without a growing root tip. So we are pretty much done here. I'm making sure that the Leca is nice and tight because there's guaranteed air gaps between them, and I want those roots to go down. And because there aren't so many, we want the Leca to be touching so that there's a lot of wicking action. There's a wick that'll pull up the water from the water reservoir. It'll get the Leca nice and moist, and then the Leca will pull that moisture up. So it's going to be a very humid environment in those roots, but it's not going to be sopping wet. I'm going to top this off with a layer of pebbles, and I find that in the winter my environment is very dry, and the top layer of Leca can be very dry and it can kill new roots that are dying. So I found this very helpful. It's a tip that I got from the channel The Orchid Room, which has been working extremely well for me. So I'm gonna put this right back on my shelves, and I will keep you posted on its progress. So as of right now, we have 5 different fans, and all we need is for new roots to start growing down and adapting into the Leca, and then we'll have some more fans coming in at a later time. If you guys like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more orchid content. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.